The 5.7 HEMI V8, the name alone makes muscle car fans nod with respect. It's the engine that put Dodge back on the map, the motor that roared life into a new era of horsepower wars. But here's the twist. While it became the king of modern muscle, it also carries a deadly flaw. So let's answer the first big question right now. Yes, the 5.7 HEMI deserves its crown. But here's the question that keeps gearheads up at night. How can an engine so loved also be so dangerous to its own reputation? Stick around, because the story of the HEMI isn't just about horsepower, it's about legacy, controversy, and survival. History. To understand why the 5.7 HEMI matters so much, we've got to rewind to the early 2000s. Back then, muscle cars were almost extinct. Sure, the Mustang was still around, but the Camaro and Firebird had been killed off in 2002. Dodge was still selling big sedans, but nothing was soul. Truck buyers had options, but none of them carried the swagger of the old-school Mopar power plants. People thought the golden age of big displacement American V8s was over. Then in 2003, Chrysler dropped a bombshell. They unveiled the 5.7-liter HEMI V8 in the Dodge Ram 1500. Suddenly, the word HEMI wasn't just a nostalgic nod to the past. It was back in the flesh, under the hood of a truck that could tow, haul, and still lay rubber at a stoplight. And it wasn't long before the HEMI spread like wildfire. Chrysler stuffed it into everything. The Dodge Charger, the Dodge Magnum, the Jeep Grand Cherokee, the Chrysler 300, and, of course, the reborn Dodge Challenger. Almost overnight, Dodge and Chrysler became the face of modern muscle. The HEMI name itself carries a history that goes back to the 1950s. The original HEMI engines got their name from their hemispherical combustion chambers, which allowed for efficient airflow and big power in racing. They were monsters on the drag strip and legends on the street. By reviving that badge for the 5.7, Chrysler wasn't just making an engine, they were resurrecting an icon. And it worked. Sales surged, Mopar culture came roaring back, and suddenly Dodge was seen as the only American brand truly keeping muscle car DNA alive. How it works. So what exactly makes the 5.7 HEMI tick? On paper, it doesn't look like witchcraft. It's a pushrod V8 with 16 valves, a cast iron block, and aluminum heads. But the genius is in the details. The engine delivered 345 horsepower and 375 pound-feet of torque in its earliest form, and it only grew stronger over the years. That balance of raw power and reliability made it a perfect fit not just for muscle cars, but also for trucks and SUVs. The HEMI design gets its name from those semi-hemispherical combustion chambers. Instead of a flat or wedge-shaped chamber, the HEMI's dome-shaped design allows for larger valves and more efficient airflow. The result? Better breathing, stronger combustion, and more torque. That's why when you step on the gas, you don't just move, you feel shoved back into your seat. But Dodge didn't stop there. The 5.7 HEMI came with tech that made it surprisingly modern. One of the biggest features was MDS, multi-displacement system. Basically, when you're cruising on the highway and don't need all that power, the HEMI can shut down 4 cylinders and run as a 4-cylinder to save fuel. Then the second you floor it, the other cylinders kick back in and you're back to V8 Thunder. It gave drivers the best of both worlds. Muscle car power without totally killing fuel economy. Another trick, the use of variable valve timing in later versions. It allowed the engine to breathe more efficiently across different RPMs, giving better torque at low speeds and stronger pull-up high. Pair all of this with that signature HEMI rumble, and you had an engine that felt both old school and futuristic at the same time. And here's the real secret. The 5.7 wasn't just powerful, it was versatile. You could buy it in a family sedan, a work truck, or a weekend toy. No matter what you drove, firing it up gave you that same heart-pounding muscle car soundtrack. That's what made it more than just an engine. It made it a movement. The problems. But here's where the fairy tale cracks. For all its glory, the 5.7 HEMI has a flaw so infamous it's become part of its identity. And it all starts with a sound, what owners call the HEMI tick. If you've ever heard it, you know what I'm talking about. A faint tapping noise from the engine bay that slowly grows louder. Some people shrug it off as harmless, But for many, it's the first warning sign of disaster. The culprit? Premature wear on the camshaft and lifters. Over time, the metal surfaces can start to grind, causing that ticking noise. Left untreated, it can lead to catastrophic engine failure. And here's the scary part, it's unpredictable. Some HEMIs will run for 200,000 miles without a single issue. Others will start ticking before they hit 70,000. There's no perfect way to predict it, and that's what makes it so frustrating for owners. You could buy your dream Challenger or Ram, maintain it religiously, and still end up with a ticking time bomb. The problem became so widespread that entire online communities sprung up around diagnosing and fixing the HEMI tick. Mechanics cashed in on repairs. Some owners replaced lifters and camshafts. Others had to go through full engine rebuilds. For an engine that was supposed to represent American toughness, this was a serious black eye. And the tick wasn't the only issue. Some owners reported problems with the MDS system, where the constant switching between 4 and 8-cylinder mode led to extra wear. Others complained about oil consumption. Taken together, these flaws gave critics ammunition to say Dodge had built a legend on shaky ground. But even with all these flaws, people still loved the 5.7 HEMI, which brings us to its legacy. Legacy. The 5.7 HEMI isn't perfect, but its cultural impact is undeniable. For 2 decades, it's been the backbone of Dodge and Chrysler performance. Without it, we probably wouldn't have seen the rebirth of the Charger or the Challenger. We might not have gotten the Hellcat, the Demon, or the Scat Pack. The 5.7 laid the foundation for Dodge's entire muscle lineup, and it gave Mopar fans a reason to be proud again. It also proved something important, that passion still sells. In a world obsessed with efficiency and hybrids, Dodge dared to double down on a thundering pushrod V8, and people lined up to buy it. From young enthusiasts to old-school hot rodders, the HEMI united generations under one sound, the sound of raw American muscle. Even the flaws became part of the conversation. For some, fixing the tick was like a rite of passage. Surviving it made the bond with the car even stronger. It turned ownership into a story, something to laugh about later. And that's the thing. Muscle cars have never been about perfection. They've always been about passion. Now, as Dodge heads toward an electrified future, the 5.7 HEMI stands tall as one of the last true icons of the V8 era. It gave everyday drivers access to muscle power, it kept Detroit in the headlines, and it reminded the world that sometimes brute force and a big engine are exactly what people want. Why the HEMI wasn't just for gearheads. What made the 5.7 HEMI so legendary wasn't only its brute force, it was the way it became part of everyday life. Unlike exotic V8s hidden inside 6-figure supercars, the HEMI wasn't reserved for the rich or the hardcore. It was built for everyone. You didn't need to wear a racing helmet or show up at a drag strip to feel its muscle. All you had to do was walk into a Dodge or Chrysler dealership, sign some papers, and drive home with the kind of power that once belonged only to legends. Think about it. You could buy a Chrysler 300 with leather seats and a HEMI under the hood. A car that looked classy in the office parking lot, but roared like a beast when you mashed the throttle. Or you could get a Jeep Grand Cherokee with the same engine, meaning your family grocery hauler could also light up the tires. Even the Ram 1500 pickup truck carried the HEMI badge proudly. Contractors